What should I do?
What should I do?
What should I do?
What are my rights?
What are my rights?
What are my rights?
A legal course of action.
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 Been admitted as in one book.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to a brand new episode of Legal Morse of Action. This is Patricio, and as always, I'm joined by attorney Erin Morse. How you doing, Erin?
So good. How are you? It's almost Halloween, so I have 2 kids, so this is an important weekend for us.
No, I'm excited because once I leave here, I get to go home and work on my actual costume.
Oh yeah.
I'm going to be Dr. Octopus from Spider-Man.
Yeah, and not a lot of people know this on this podcast, but he works Halloween Horror Nights.
Yes, and I still have blood on me.
Yeah,
this is fake blood. Let's make that very clear.
It's weird. Lawyers, that's like evidence. Like someone's about to come do a swab.
But no, on tonight's show, I'm excited about this one.
I'm excited too.
Because this was, we talked about bringing more and more guests on the show and making it more, how would I say it? Just interactive and networking as well. And you had thrown out a name. I'm like, well, let me see if this individual is down.
I know.
And within 30 minutes, I had gotten a response directly from him that he's like, let's set it up. Let's get it going. And I'm excited to introduce the Honorable Judge Mize. How are you today, sir?
I'm very well. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on. And I just want to make sure I'm saying it correctly. Mize?
Yes.
Mize. Okay. Perfect, because I'm horrible at pronunciation. Erin can attest to that on that one.
Sorry, I review everything that goes out of the office.
But how are you today, sir?
I'm doing great.
Once again, thank you for coming on. I know it was a little bit of a short notice, but like I said, we were going back and forth through Facebook Messenger nonetheless. And we'd set it up, we coordinated, and boom, we're here. The reason why we wanted to reach out to you is there are, how would I say it? Let me make sure I say this correctly. I would say, would you like to take this one here real quick?
Well, he's running for judge in Orange County.
And you are an actual sitting judge here in Orange County.
And he practices family law, which is on topic for what we do. So I think it was a valuable insight that he could give to, a lot of litigants. I do know that even from my practice, I have a lot of knowledge that a lot of family law ends up being pro se litigants, or people who are going to court without attorneys, and that there's a lot of legal avenues to be taken. There's a lot to navigate when you're handling a family law case. And I think one example that sometimes clients who at least come to me don't realize is that when you go to court, you are obligated to deal with all of the issues that arise out of your marriage, right? So in some states, I know you could get divorced. I think North Carolina is an example of this. You could get divorced and not deal with the custody issues, right? I know custody is a bad word in Florida law, but you could go to court and not deal with custody or property issues, whereas in Florida, you have to deal with all of it. So, in dealing with some of that issues, is that something that has come up for you when you have people who are pro se litigants and come up before you to try to have a trial?
It's definitely interesting. I would say more than half of our cases have at least one pro se party. And it can be tough to navigate the legal system without an attorney. As a judge, I'm limited at what I can tell them because I can't give legal advice and I can't practice law. But I do try to make my courtroom as user-friendly as possible. And I try to make it, not operating in a way that people can't understand. I think, we're a public courtroom, and we ought to be trying to, as best we can, operate in a way that normal people can navigate and, advocate for themselves.
Yeah. I think that's an important perspective. Something that I work really hard on, and I've, poured over a bunch of times, is my parenting plans and final judgments. I try to make them readable, and I have this, mental picture myself that these people, even once I give them, I have hope that lawyers will leave their life and they won't need lawyers, right? So that's what I try to tell them. And that's how I try to prepare some of my final judgments or parenting plans and things like that, that when they walk away and they have this thing in their hand, it's not this, legal manuscript that is unreadable for them, right? I try to put time sharing in charts and holidays in charts and little things like that. I think that the accessibility or understanding of what to do once lawyers and courts like leave your life to reduce how much they're in your life is a goal I have. So I can speak to that effort that I try to make, because I don't want them. I don't need repeat customers, I don't think.
Yeah. Anyone who comes to a lawyer, particularly a family lawyer, it's usually not for positive reasons unless it's an adoption.
Yeah.
So you're seeing them on one of the worst times of their life, and you do want to. Hopefully, they leave our proceedings in a way that they can move on with their lives successfully.
Yeah.
The readability of judgments is important. Like, our documents are meant for public consumption and public use,
Yeah.
and they ought to be written that way. Also, the logistical nature of parenting plans.
Yeah.
Right. Like, when I write a parenting plan, I try to think, how is this actually going to work in these people's lives? Like, how does this work with this person's job versus the school? And, the children are in 2 or 3 different schools. How long is that line for each of those 3 schools? If they have to, exchange the children after the school line, if you've got 2 or 3 school pickup lines the family's going through for the different schools, I try to think a lot about the logistics that need to be accounted for in a parenting plan to put those kids in the best position they can be in.
Right. That enforceability and that element of it is always hard. And I find, at least myself as an attorney who, I do practice, I do give out legal advice. There are a lot of times where I'm like, the law is not capable of righting every wrong or curing every defect. So, some of it, there's definitely some gray areas that, the ability of these parenting plans to cover everything just falls off. It's just not possible. That's my opinion.
So I kind of wanted to dive in a little bit with you, Judge, in regards to the pathway to where you're at right now. Growing up, did you want to be a judge, or did you want to pursue a practice in the field of law?
I needed to be in an area where the most cantankerous personality succeeded. That's the word I'll use, the cantankerous. So law was the natural place to go.
Yeah.
I said a little football. Yeah, I was a military brat. I moved around a lot my whole life, and I just kind of had a mind for adversarial proceedings.
Mm.
So I ended up in Florida as the last place my dad was stationed in the military.
Okay.
Stayed here afterwards. Graduated high school in Tampa after starting high school in Brevard County.
Mm-hmm. That must have been tough.
I moved my last year of high school.
Oh, senior day.
Wah, wah.
It was interesting. I moved a lot as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as a kid, you would hear those people that are like, oh, I've had this friend since kindergarten or first grade. Well, I went to numerous different elementary schools. So I was always the new kid.
Right.
And so there were ups and downs to that. The positive is that I'm really comfortable with change, because just from a very young age, I was constantly in a position of change, and I'm good at getting to a new atmosphere and adapting.
Mm-hmm.
I always did kind of wonder, what was it like to have a hometown? What was it like to be from somewhere?
Yeah.
Because I was never from anywhere.
Yeah.
And when I met my wife and she was in Orlando, I kind of got that for the first time in my life, which was a new thing that I've really enjoyed.
Yeah, that's interesting. Maybe I take that for granted because I grew up in a very small town, and I use town loosely because it's in fact a village. There are less than 2,500 people there. I had to travel out of my village across another village. They're in fact villages. They don't have the qualifications to be a town, to a city 45 minutes to an hour away for a bus ride to get to school. And I graduated with 147 people in my high school class. So,
I had about the same, but adding 0 to the end of that one.
Yeah. So I'm from a really small town, and the best thing I think I ever did was get out of it. So perhaps, sometimes that small town doesn't breed a lot of opportunity and that hometownness. So, but there's always ups and downs, right? The grass may always seem greener.
Yeah, I've never known what would have been, because you can never know the counterfactual of what would have been like to be raised in one place and grow up there. So I've always, I've always just kind of looked in there at positives and negatives.
Yeah.
But I think had a craving. I had a craving to be from somewhere, right?
Yeah.
To kind of have a hometown with roots.
Mhm.
Went to the University of Florida and went straight through to law school. And I met my wife just a few weeks before graduation. We had both been there all 3 years,
Yeah.
but just by some miracle had not interacted. So we had our first date 2 weeks before graduation.
Okay.
Aw.
That's a stressful time
And
because
I-
you're staring down the barrel of taking the bar. If you are going to sit for the bar, not that everyone does.
Well, so we
You
had that
obviously
first date, and then we're getting ready for bar studying. So we have to decide, what do we do? I mean, do we pretty much either have to be in this foxhole together, or like go and get in separate foxholes, because you've got to be in some foxhole.
Mhm.
And we decided to study for the bar together.
That's crazy.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Because you have to have such a rhythm, and you have to know what you're doing and have some consistency set up to study for the bar. I had a 3-year-old when I studied for the bar. So he used to always ask me if I was going to watch the videos of the weird guys. So
Mhm.
that's what my
Earhart on Evidence, kind of, yeah. It was we used to just jointly listen together for hours to the CDs, and then we'd go to the
Yeah.
flashcards, and then we'd say, let's go eat at Panera. What folder can we bring?
yeah.
And so I always feel like whatever happens to us, we're good. Our
Right.
love was forged in the
Yeah.
fire of bar prep.
We have a comment coming in from Jennifer Benjamin saying, I can totally relate, Judge. That question of where you're from is a tricky one.
Yeah, she's a colleague that I went to law school with her, and I studied for the bar together a little bit. We would have our meetups with friends, and she was I think an Army brat. So she also traveled along and doesn't have a hometown.
Now, did the
Yeah.
meetups you had for bar studying, did they help or did they scare you more?
They scared me more. I found that I had to for me, I had to pull myself away from it, because there was a lot of that competitive nature of, you didn't know this question, or what about this question, or they would kind of get in your head, and I don't know if it was intentional or not, but it got to me, because the nature of my personality is listen, if I saw it and I know it's right, right, this is probably why I own my own law firm, right? I'm okay to take the path less traveled if I think that it's the right one or what's correct. And that proved me well, because when I passed the bar, only 32% of my graduating class passed the bar. But I peeled away from them, because I was I don't know what you guys are doing, but it is confusing me.
Well, it's a high stakes time, because with the bar, you're not just trying to pass. Typically, you've got, whatever job situation you have for after graduation is
Yeah.
dependent on passing the bar.
Yep.
So you're not just trying to study like you would for a normal test. You need your possibility of failure to be zero.
Yeah.
So you're trying to study enough to where there is zero chance of failure. And that can, be pretty intense.
Yeah. And I had a family, right? I was married and had a child. I don't know that my family could have endured me doing bar prep again. Financially, it really wasn't possible.
Yeah.
I had the weight of, supporting my family. I'm the only lawyer in my family, in all directions of the tree, right? So I changed this family tree. So, for my
Nice way to put
family,
it.
I changed it. So, and I had a 3-year-old. I had a husband who, he was not a lawyer. That's just not, with no risk of having 2 lawyers in this family.
Probably means you picked correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, he was working obviously to support us. And then so when I was in law school, I started law school when my son was 5 months old, and I did a part-time program, and I would be with him all day and then go to law school in the evenings. I didn't know that you're supposed to spend 3 hours reading for every hour you're in class. I had 2 hours. I had a nap.
And this is what I was going to ask in regard, Judge, because everyone that I know who has prepared for the bar or an attorney, they like you said, they put themselves in that foxhole. They isolate themselves from the outside world so they can focus. What was the prep for you two if you guys were prepping together?
It was 12, 14 hours a day of
Yeah.
flashcards. We would sit with the Barbary books and take turns reading page by page. So I'd read the even pages, she'd read the odd pages, and we would read it out loud so that you get the benefit of reading and also listening.
That's an amazing example of teamwork.
Wow.
It really is.
Yeah, we would take turns quizzing each other. We would grade each other's practice exams.
It's probably a good example of how intellectually the two of you are well matched. Because I found that studying with some other people, right, some other colleagues that I like don't keep in contact with, but that I could sometimes move through material faster. Well, that was like a survival mechanism, right? I had a child, and so I can move through these materials really fast, that I was slowed down. So I really had to like foxhole myself, because I would watch the videos on like 1.5 speed, because if it was slow, I couldn't let it, like it couldn't keep my attention. So it had to be fast enough that I had to, it, like if I looked away, I would lose.
Well, I was really thankful for my wife at it was, not my wife then, but I was really thankful for my wife at that time, because she kept me on track.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
she was like, well, this is what we're doing.
You're like,
And it involves studying for 14 hours.
Yeah.
Wives said to do that.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I always say, you ever know that Rihanna song, We Found Love in a Hopeless Place?
Yeah.
Stop.
Yeah, I liked. I think it came out like a year later, so it
Yeah.
wasn't quite lined up.
Right.
Well, I like to think it was pretty much about us.
Yeah. She had you in mind when she wrote it.
Yeah, I like to think she heard our story and was inspired.
So at the point where you two graduate law school, take the bar, pass, what was your ideal thought at that point? Like, what's next in your chapter?
Yeah, your career. What did that look like?
I think the immediate thought was, oh, I'm so glad I passed.
Yeah, thank you.
And you have that stress you carry in your shoulders forever, like a traumatic experience.
Yeah,
that, like,
you
kind of
feel like
permanently-
this the whole time.
Yeah, a little bit of permanency. I already had a job by the time we started dating in Tampa.
Mhm.
She already had a job in Orlando.
Yep.
And when we spent time in both cities, we quickly determined Orlando was where we wanted to be.
That's good.
So I spent
Good for us.
my first couple of years practicing law, commuting from Orlando to Tampa every day.
That's dreadful.
Oh man.
What did you do? What?
We lived in Celebration to kind of split the commute. So she
Okay.
was working in kind of East Orlando,
Okay.
and I was working in Tampa. So we lived in Celebration,
Yeah.
and we just both commuted every day
Wow.
because I didn't want to.
What did you practice?
Business litigation.
Okay,
I
so
would-
when I did business litigation, I recall having 8 to 10 hours a day of billables, which was a 13 or 14-hour day.
Yes, that is
So
accurate.
you commuted after that day?
And before.
Oh God.
Wow.
God bless you.
I fell for her hard and fast.
Yeah, I was like, that's relentless.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the reasons I personally jumped out of business litigation, because I have a family that wasn't conducive to having a family. So, and I kind of looked at the snapshot a little bit of what the partners' lives looked like, and maybe they were happy in it, but I wouldn't have been happy in that circumstance, right? They didn't seem like they had a lot of any real balance to their personal lives, and that felt like it was too high of a cost for me.
And I think a lot of lawyers, they kind of have those tendencies anyways, in terms of overworking. It attracts a lot of type A personalities. And you need to be careful not to be in an atmosphere that accentuates your worst tendencies for your own mental health.
Yeah.
And if you're in a place that really encourages you to, put all of your personal kind of wellness aside
Yeah.
for the sake of work, and you're somebody who has a danger of doing that anyways,
Right.
you've got to be extra careful.
It's toxic to yourself. And that I knew I was capable of doing them. I met my billables, but sitting there, I was like, at what cost, right? Is this an exchange I think is worth making? And then I did the math on what I was getting paid versus how many hours I was putting in. And at the hourly rate, I did the math with my husband, and I was like, I could work this many hours at Target.
Yeah, just like double up Target and Walmart. And
Yeah, like
fully
if I had 2 of these jobs, because I'm not considering overtime, I could do like Starbucks and Target, right? Like where I work, because it's simple and brainless, and make the same pay and be away from you guys for even just like 5 to 10 hours less a week.
So I saw that you were already in practice after graduating the bar, but then you went
Passing the bar.
My apologies.
Graduate law school.
What was the shift that pushed you to open your own law firm?
My wife was really, killing it in her career.
Yeah.
So I came to Orlando and I practiced here at Ackerman in town from 2012 to 2015. She eventually got offered a job in DC that was just a dream position.
Nice.
And I really loved Ackerman, and particularly the team that I was on
Yeah.
there with was just the best litigation team you could ask for.
Absolutely.
But I love my wife more.
Right.
So
That's the right way to live. That's the right way to live. Coming from a divorce attorney, that's the right idea.
I think when you have two professionals in a marriage,
Mhm.
there are going to be some times when the career interests conflict.
Yeah, you got to
And
give.
You're going to have to somebody's going to have to make a decision that is not necessarily the best for their career, for the sake of what's best for the marriage overall.
Right.
And her career was just, she was really good at it.
Yeah.
And she was excelling. And we made the decision. I think it was the right one that was the career to focus on most. So she got the job in DC, and we went up there for several years. I got a job there litigating. She eventually got a job in South Florida, and I had been doing mostly business litigation at all the law firms I was at, which I really enjoyed the types of cases.
Yeah.
But I wanted to represent more individual people.
Okay.
I just wanted to represent, the people I could meet in normal places, as opposed to, at a corporate retreat or something.
Right. Right.
And so I opened up my own firm, still doing a good bit of business litigation for the clients that I'd had for a long time. But I also did fair debt collection practices work.
Okay, that's interesting.
For individual consumers.
Yeah.
And what I loved about it was I could meet clients anywhere.
Yeah.
There were many people who had issues with in the debt collection space, and I could meet somebody in line at the DMV or in line at Home Depot, and I could help people that I would meet in my day-to-day life for a much larger percentage of my time.
Yeah.
So I started my own firm doing that, and it was a blast. I loved having my own office.
Yeah. Me too.
It's nice having your name on the door.
It is nice. That big sign means I'm important.
Yes.
Bought some wood in the shape of my name, and
Well, I make most life decisions based on how do I make myself feel like a big shot.
Yeah.
What can I do to spruce up the ego?
I think that is what the practice of law is. I used to make a joke to some of my colleagues that we should read the like, especially the very much older cases that you read, especially in contract law, where why they're referencing each other so often is because it's like a big room of men, right? Obviously, because at that time they were just like shaking each other's hands and patting each other on the back, going, "You're really smart, and you're really smart, and I'm going to tell everybody, and you're smart, and I'll tell everyone you're smart. If you tell everyone I'm smart, okay? All right, break."
We can do it like in Parliament, where every time you address someone, you have to say the right honorable.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what they were doing with their dusty wigs, shaking each other's hands, saying, "I'll tell everyone how smart you are."
They still wear the wigs in England in court.
I did know that. I think they also do in Canada.
Okay.
I think so, because they're under the Queen's rule.
Well, and I believe in some of the Caribbean islands.
Yeah.
That are
because they
affiliated with
are.
Britain, yeah. Which is
It's
hot
crazy.
in the Caribbean to have to wear the wig.
Yeah.
I mean, that's commitment.
Like, I'm glad we fought the Revolutionary War so I can just wear a regular suit.
Oh, yeah.
It was worth it.
Yeah. I thank God every day I was born in
Worth
America. I've always thought that being born in America is just hitting the genetic lottery.
Yeah. Just,
My wife was born in Bulgaria.
Oh, okay.
And
That's interesting.
spent a large part of her life trying to get to America.
Yeah.
And I've always thought it was just.
And then she went to law school, and so that's pretty amazing, right?
I mean, that is one of the many aspects of her that are amazing.
Oh, but I'm just saying, it not being her first language, I imagine, right?
No.
And being able to go to law school and pass that, which I feel like we are, wordsmiths essentially, right? We in the
And
business
also
of
be
words.
personally responsible for me passing the bar.
Yeah. She undertook the personal responsibility of guiding another person through it, and successfully so, right?
So, Judge, I was actually reading on your website that you're not only you can practice here in Florida, but also in DC and multiple other states. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. When I was in the business litigation field, I litigated in a number of states. So I got admitted to 7 state bars. So I'm admitted in Florida, inactive now in some others since I've become a judge. So I'm admitted in Texas, Colorado, Wyoming, Virginia, West Virginia, and DC.
Wow.
And then, a number of federal courts. So I've litigated in, I'd have to remember all the states, but I've litigated in Texas, New York, California, Oklahoma, Virginia, West Virginia, Georgia.
All over the map.
Illinois, Indiana. Wyoming, Colorado. I mean, I've been in a lot of courts.
So how many bars does that mean you had to take?
Actually, I only took one bar. So I took the Florida bar.
Because it was federal?
Well, because Florida has reciprocity, I think with no one. We don't do
Right.
reciprocity.
With no one.
But I was got admitted in DC because DC will let anyone weigh in
Right.
as long as you got a certain score on the bar.
Yep.
And then DC had reciprocity with those other states.
Oh.
So yeah, I was able to.
Yeah, that's
Now some states will say you have to be admitted in a state with reciprocity, and some will say you have to have taken the bar in a state with reciprocity.
Yep.
So I couldn't have gotten every state that way.
right.
But there were the states that just required admission to a state with reciprocity. I was able to weigh into.
Oh, that's interesting.
And we actually have a question coming in from the comments. How do you manage all those CLEs?
Diligently.
Yeah.
Yeah. You look for CLE that will satisfy multiple states.
Okay.
So, if you go to a national conference where they get it approved in all 50 states, that can be really
Right.
valuable. There's some online services that make a point to get it
Oh,
approved in many states.
Yeah.
I'm a CLE master.
You must
That's
be.
insane.
And hopefully you want the CLE to be also helpful to your,
Right, but sometimes you
Career.
got to go for what's going to work, right?
you do have to meet the minimum.
But I mean, as a judge, having knowledge of all the areas of law that might intersect, even with whatever you're presiding over, whatever, division you're in, I think would be helpful because at least in family law, we have a lot of other areas of laws that intersect, right? We have contract law, right? Because parenting plans and marital settlement agreements are contract law. We have property law, right? So we're dealing with people's property. And then sometimes you could have another count with torts. So, yeah, we've got a lot of.
Sometimes we deal with international law.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, sometimes you have international marriages from other countries that
Mhm.
are getting litigated here, and you have to. I've dealt with
Yeah.
someone in practice, and as a judge, sometimes you deal with international legal issues.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's, I don't have a ton of practice with that. I have one case where I have some international interplay, but it's, for relocation to a non-Hague country. So that's going to be a fun day.
Well, I keep waiting for the international case where there's some reason I need to make a fact-finding trip to the other country.
I think you
It
will.
hasn't come up, hasn't
Yeah,
come
you
up yet.
should Just go.
That's not a real thing.
Yeah,
That's
it's
not-
not. Judges
That's
don't
not how
do
that
that.
works.
So, running your own firm, wife working in DC, you're all over the place. What got you to the bench?
I saw the difference. Number one, Florida was the best place to practice law. I mean,
I'm happy to know that because this
Yeah.
is all I've done. I haven't really tried to step outside of Florida because it's impractical for me with kids, right?
So I have practiced, or at least had cases, not necessarily practiced, but I've had cases in many states, and Florida's bar none the best place, and particularly Central Florida, and particularly
Yeah.
the Ninth Circuit.
That's
It is-
amazing.
Yeah, it is an excellent place to practice law, and we always knew this is where we wanted to be once we were kind of able career-wise to get back to Orlando. And I had just seen the difference it made for my clients when I had great judges. I mean, it really mattered if the person that was there had how much prep work they'd put in,
Mhm.
how much they cared,
Mhm.
how closely they followed the law.
Yep.
I mean, I wanted when you have a judge who like this person's always going to do what the law says, they're always going to be
Mhm.
prepared. You have a sense of reliance and stability. And I just thought that was something that everybody should have. And I wanted to be a courtroom where everybody would know they got it.
Yeah, I have a lot of good things to say about our judges. I'm happy with our judges and mainly my experiences with the judges on the family law circuit. And I really hope that the judges know that I understand that there's a very large caseload. And that dealing with the issues that we have, and sometimes, the way that attorneys behave with each other, and even seeing the way that they'll communicate with the judicial assistant, my heart goes out to judicial assistants. I really have a soft spot in my heart for what I feel like they likely need to deal with, or sometimes I even see happening, and I'm like, oof,
The judicial assistants are heroes.
I know.
How hard they work, and everything they put up with to maintain a positive attitude. I mean, they deserve some type of like specific holiday just for them.
I think so. If there was a time I remember, because I was a paralegal before so I had some experience there. There was a time when the judicial assistants could receive gifts, like little things like donuts or stuff like that, and they really can't anymore. And I think they really deserved it with what they have to deal with. I think that's a very an unsung hero, if you will, right? They rarely get recognized, at least from our side.
Well, and everyone sees the things, the enormous amount of work they do that's public facing, and then there's a whole other side that's non-public facing, and so it is a diligent group that we could not live without.
Right. They certainly they earn their part for sure. How many cases do you typically have on rotation?
Right now, I have a little over 2,400 active cases.
Yeah.
Whoa.
That's the real number. We get periodic reports just to let us know how many cases we have. And
you didn't sit there and go 1, 2.
yeah,
I'm just
no,
kidding.
I didn't like control on any type of spreadsheet or anything. But right now, it's a little over 2,400 cases.
It's wild, right?
So you just got to try as hard as you can to stay on top of it, because every person who's there, it's typically the most important thing going on in their life.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I often try to think about this from the perspective of a litigant. If you're a litigant in a family court case, particularly if there are children involved, you're coming to a place where the judge is a stranger. He doesn't know you. He doesn't know your children.
Mm-hmm.
And you get maybe an hour or two, sometimes more with this person, but never as long as you like. And then at the end of that proceeding, and you get to hopefully say your piece and the judge has listened to you. But bottom line, at the end of it, the judge tells you what's going to happen to your kids, when you're going to see them. And sometimes when parents can't agree, he has to make, very important and intimate parenting decisions. And I try to imagine what it would be like if it were me and it was a stranger telling me what was going to happen to my kids after they'd seen me for a couple of hours.
Right.
That would be enormously painful and frustrating.
Yeah, traumatic.
And there's really no other way to do it.
Right. There's no better way, right? It's not perfect.
There's no better way to do it, but I do try to keep in mind how heart-wrenching it must be for the people that are there. And I sometimes, I think it helps if parties know that other people in the courtroom understand what they're going through.
Right.
All the parties, just like for everyone else who's there, it's business, right? The lawyers are going about their job, the clerks, the judicial assistants, the deputies. For everyone there, it's their 9 to 5. For those litigants, it's what happens with their children when they walk out of the courthouse.
Right. There's an other side of this, right? At some point, all of these like judges and lawyers leave their lives, and the hope is that we don't leave it with some kind of vacuum, right? That their lives just get sucked into, and like, what do I do now? And they're falling apart, or they continue to fall apart. There's something that I try to advise my clients of often, because I get this a lot. You should let the judge know that this happened. And I'm like, that's not a thing. The only time communication with the judge happens is if there is a motion for which I have a legal reason to get some relief with a factual basis. I'm like, I'm not just gonna be like, hey, I just wanted to let you know they were late to pick up. I'm like, he can't consume that information in a way that would make it valuable. I'm like, what is he going to do with this information, right? Just, if you want him to know, why don't you write it down on a Post-it, put it in your own pocket, and pretend like he knows. So I get a lot of that, so getting that from, where there's the barrier of a lawyer, I imagine from a pro se side, things like that happen a lot, where and again, the judicial assistant is who gets dumped on, right? They're your gatekeeper. So I imagine that's bringing me back to these judicial assistants who I'm sure I got sympathy for.
Yeah, well, and I think one thing that's frustrating for litigants is they don't know why things work the way they work. Like, why does a particular system work this way? Why does the court this way? Why does it take a certain amount of time to get a hearing? And why do I have to file a motion? And why does it happen this way when somebody responds? But I imagine there's a million questions. And so if they have a good lawyer, not just to tell them what's going to happen, but to tell them like why it is that way.
Yeah, the practicality.
I would imagine that takes away some of the frustration, because you're more stressed about something. When something is very important in your life and you don't even understand why it is that way,
Yeah.
it really, I imagine, ups your anxiety.
Oh yeah. I do try to advise my clients that our judges have, and my guesstimate had always been between 2,000 and 3,000 cases each. I'm on point. And there's a practicability of this as a system, right? Where there's that many cases that you manage, you're not just like, you know what, I wonder what Bob's time sharing is like. I don't think any judge is like, hey, how's it going? How you guys like being co-parents, right? Was she rude to you at drop off, right? They have this kind of perceived idea that there's a practical way for that kind of investment in minutia type details is something that is either necessary to present or effective for whatever goal you're trying to reach, right? So I think that that's a big question mark with the judiciary is why, because for example, I had a UCCJEA case, right? So where I'm across state lines, and I've had quite a few of them. I've done a few UCCJEA conferences, which is a unique one. I don't know if you've ever had the blessing to be able to do one of those, but they're very fun. So in this case, I had a colleague who I became close with through this course, practices in Massachusetts. They can get a hearing next day in the afternoon.
Really?
I was like, but this isn't truly an emergency, because I've always interpreted emergency as immediate loss of life or limb, right? I won't file for an emergency unless it meets that qualifications. So that's on me. That's my personal interpretation of the law. That is not cited anywhere in any statute or case, but that's how I've always interpreted it. So I will not let my clients use me to file an emergency because something like, oh, they denied me time sharing. I'm like, not an emergency, and I'm not filing that. So no. So, but there, if you have something because it's like important or urgent, they were able to get a hearing the next day. They were like, how long will it take for you guys to get a hearing? And this was a Polk County case. So, and I was like, we need like 3 months. we need an hour or two. Yeah. See you in February. So it's the practicality that things run a little different down here. And in their perception, it's like, because we're the slow South, right? So there's a little bit of that perception here. So, litigants oftentimes have that difficulty, right? Where they'll get legal advice from Facebook. When with my case, when we needed to get a parenting agreement for the summer, we told the judge we needed it right away and we got a hearing the next day. I'm like, that's never going to happen here unless you have a real emergency, right? Or, there's some other like practical organizational one. It's typically not going to be an evidentiary hearing.
No, and I've noticed because working with criminal attorneys, depending on the status of the case and the emergency motion, like I was able to schedule a hearing sometimes that same afternoon, depending on the judge's judge's calendar and availability.
See, now this blows my mind. I do only family law. Were they able to get that here? Was that for an evidentiary hearing?
It was whether it was for a bond hearing or a quash capias kind of thing.
Right.
But yeah, depending on.
But that's different because that was taking somebody's like liberty and freedom away, and that's a big constitutional right.
Yeah. There are different rules in the criminal space, and I've not served in the criminal division yet.
Yeah.
But there are certain rules when someone is arrested for how long they have to have before they have to appear before a judge. Mm-hmm. And the judges, we do take turns out at the jail as the jail judge. I'm currently scheduled for Christmas Day.
Yeah.
Oh, those are fun.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, and those are some kind of cases. Those are some cases where sometimes the attorney would be at the jail for the arraignment to see it. Sometimes, if it was a violation of probation, we would immediately already have the motion for bond ready to go at the arraignment. And sometimes the judge at the arraignment would decide, all right, we'll go forward with it.
It's things like that make me very confident to remain in family law. There's very few circumstances where there's immediate loss of life or limb. Removing the children from the jurisdiction is one of them that I would consider an emergency. But short of that, I can take days off. Sometimes I have to remind, sometimes just everybody that I work with, right? Any form of the persons that I have to manage and deal with, right? That, we work in a courtroom. It's okay. It's okay to close your laptop. It's okay to that's a big one. I think the advent of email delivery and having that instant accessibility leaves a lot of people that we work with, whether clients, opposing counsel, whomever, this expectation that my response will be within minutes.
Yeah.
Right. I'm like, this is not an instant messenger. We're not chatting on AIM. Or, if I had an all-day trial yesterday, right? So there was a couple of circumstances where I had to let some people know. They're like, is she going to answer me? No, I'm prepping for a trial and I will be in a trial all day. Right. So,
Well, and you want your client to know that when it's their trial, they'll be your top priority. But you can only have one
Right.
trial at a time.
Yeah. Yeah. So I will say, though, that being virtual has really improved my ability to be in 2 counties in a day.
Okay, so you like the virtual?
I love it. I
Okay.
love it. If I could, I would never have another in-person hearing.
Would you be able to venture your opinion on the virtual hearings, Judge?
I can say I have issued procedures. They've given us permission to go back in person as of November 1st. My procedures that I've issued, I think they came out yesterday, are that if a hearing is non-evidentiary and 30 minutes or less, it can be held by Zoom as long as both parties agree. If it's evidentiary longer than 30 minutes or one party objects, you can request it and I'll make that decision on a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
I want to get the benefits of Zoom in terms of the savings to the parties.
It does save our clients a lot of time and money.
And all I do in like my, how I draft orders, everything, I always try to keep in mind the cost I'm imposing on people. But I think, for certain types of proceedings, something is lost by Zoom. I don't think it's, at least for me, I don't think it's the same. I think when you're dealing with something as important as somebody's child, they have a right to be in front of the judge and say their piece. And I don't think they get the same process. And I don't think everyone feels they get the same process by Zoom. At the same time, I don't want people paying their attorneys for 3 hours for a 15-minute hearing.
Right. And, there is an added cost for them, right? So we increase some access to justice with this. Because exactly like you said, I am personally very close to the courthouse, right? This is a very good, I have surface parking, right? I have a very convenient office and accessibility to that. So for me, even just dropping off the binder is of no cost. I don't charge my clients for that time. We don't do anything with that. But when we go to court, we have to make 3 binders rather than the 1, right? Because I keep everything digital. So anything that if it turns into paper, it's because I clicked print. Everything we maintain digitally. And then I have to, haul it there. I have to get there. I have to park. I have to, do the whole song and dance with security. And, we have that probably adds about an hour and a half to even a 15-minute hearing.
I think it's a balance for, I do think things are done better in person generally. I think the litigants get the best proceeding they can that way, but it is not cost-free, right? And so you have to balance, is a particular proceeding one where the benefits are in person, justify everybody having to take time out of their life. I mean, for the litigants too, it's the difference between having to go in the break room at work and having to take a day off work.
Right. I found I haven't had any clients that have said, I can't wait until we're back in person.
Okay.
They really, all of them have appreciated it, including even the clients who feel like they get a benefit from being with their attorney in person, simply come to my office.
Okay.
They like that level of comfort. And, I put them on a separate device and they sit across from me, right? So there's all the visual, everything with interaction, but they find that's been the best, especially clients who I've had, I have some cases that are lasting these 3 and 4 years. I don't have a great answer why. Okay. It just is. So they've had in-person hearings and the virtual hearings, and invariably the feedback, at least from them, and maybe it's because of how I handle it. Right. So I will accept that there's an element to, I have Patricio who sets up technology. I'm going to give clear instructions. I demand a meeting with my client before we ever step in a courtroom. So they're prepared. They know what they're expecting. I have a lot of fail safes. and I'm tech savvy, so sharing my screen, I never have trouble with. Having access to my documents, I don't have trouble with, right? So that ended up being seamless for us because we were always, a digital firm. So for me, it was an incredible improvement from the in-person, hauling the big black rolling suitcases, right? You can do it, and it's all good, and we'll probably get back to a lot of it.
Those suitcase companies have to make a living too.
Yeah, they need money too. And so do think of all the positive environmental impact. If I could make a platform for that. No,
Yeah, 100%.
maybe. Yeah. So I hope that short matters, I think if we could keep those virtual.
My short matters are staying virtual, and I may
Beautiful.
eventually. So right now, short matters and anything under 30 minutes and
Yeah.
non-evidentiary, as long as the attorneys agree, as long as both sides agree.
Yeah.
Short matters are going to be virtual. I may eventually open up an in-person day too, so people can just choose whichever one they want.
Yeah, without having to.
But I'll always have at least one virtual short matters per week.
Yeah, that will be. I will instruct my staff to use that one every time.
So Judge, like, how does your calendar look? I mean, I know you have the docket in regards that it lays out all the cases that you have, but like your calendar itself, is it like by case, or is it just like?
It's a balance because every judge decides, how they set their calendar,
Mhm.
and you want to have as much hearing time as you can and trial time because you want people to get hearings.
Yeah.
But every second you're in court is a second you can't be drafting orders, and people want their orders as quickly as possible. So, if you were to have an hour of hearing time a week, your orders would be out really quick, but then no one can ever get hearing time.
Right.
If you were to have 5 days of hearing time a week,
Mhm.
there'll be more hearing time, but it'll be months and months and months before people get their orders.
Right.
I'm currently on the bench 3.5 days per week.
Okay.
So I have hearings Monday afternoons and Friday, all day Tuesdays
Mhm.
and Friday mornings.
Mhm.
And then Wednesday and Thursdays are trial time.
Okay.
So that leaves me Monday mornings, Thursday afternoons, and Friday afternoons to prepare for all those hearings,
Yeah.
draft all the orders, and do any other administrative work I need to
Right.
do.
Right.
Now, in reality, the 1.5 days per week is just not enough to do all of those things.
It's
So
not.
so you end up doing it on nights, you end up doing it on weekends. You don't want people waiting long. I mean, these orders matter to people's lives. I mean,
Mhm.
sometimes this is telling them how their parenting relationship needs to operate,
Yeah.
and they've got to interact with the kids the next day.
Yeah.
So I don't ever want to get in a situation where people are waiting long periods of time to get my orders. So I want to keep as much hearing time as I can because I don't want people waiting months for a hearing.
Right.
So I try to keep at least 3.5 days open of in-court time per week.
Yeah.
And then I just, if in that 1.5 days I can't finish all the orders, that's what's happening on night times and on Sundays.
I imagine that it's chaos having that number of cases is got to be hard to juggle. In Volusia County, the way that, and I don't know if they just handled it this way with domestic relations cases, but every 2 to 3 months they have a docket sounding. So there's this cattle call and again, it's just like different strokes for different folks, but I think it's an interesting perspective sometimes because I imagine not a lot of judges practice in other counties or see how they handle it. They have a docket sounding and that judge calls up, whatever series of cases that are, she has. Judge Foxman is who, and I like this. And you have to kind of answer for the status of your case. So the questions that she's asking is, what's the status? Do you need an order to go to mediation? Because they don't have the standing order, I think, per se, to go to mediation. And do you need to go to mediation? Do you need us to make sure we compel discovery? Do you need us to make sure, right? Nothing evidentiary, but again, case management. So, with my Volusia County cases, I'm in front of the judge multiple times. And I think it really does breed settlement. Speaking of settlement, I think that being virtual with mediations, I've increased my settlements
Really?
exponentially.
That's fascinating. Why do you think that is?
I think people are not in this cold office with dusty books, right? Or at a courthouse feeling very uncomfortable. That's a very adverse scenario when you're there, right? You're thinking you're there and you're kind of heightened, right? This is my theory. Right?
And the other party's very close.
The other party's very close and you're angry with them, right? You guys aren't getting a divorce because you're happy. So you have that like anger, you're afraid you're going to come across them, you're going to see them, and you have a lot of these feelings. Whereas if it's a mediation, whether they're in my office, right? They're in a place of comfort, they're in like their zone, right? They're in their little bear cave.
Both sides feel like they have the home team advantage.
Yeah, you are both. Everyone is at their own
That's a
home
great way to put it.
team. Yeah. So it's not that like the mediator's office doesn't feel neutral to anybody. It feels very foreign. It's a very foreign circumstance. Whereas if they're kind of sitting there on their phone and there are other little things that they can do, right? They have the comfort of like the cereal they wanted to eat for lunch, their coffee, the way they like it. No one knows if they wore yoga pants or professional pants, little things, right? I think all those little bits of comfort take out this like very, and there's another psychological element to coming to an agreement. So sometimes cases don't agree. And this is, again, just my opinion and my experience. This is my podcast. So is that, some people aren't mentally or emotionally ready to come to an agreement, even if it's their best day in court, right? Because I talk a lot about that in my mediation. Like, this would be your best day in court. This would be your worst day in court. Balance it this way. What is the value of settlement to you? You might be paying this, but think about it as like the cost of, conclusion. So, when they're home or comfortable or in their own attorney's office and the other party isn't close by, kind of like they almost like can feel them, it's easier for them to make a decision. So I've had an incredible amount of increased settlements now that we have this virtual element of people not being uncomfortable.
That's interesting. Well, I'm sure mediators will continue to be willing to do them virtually.
Yeah, it's a good thing. I think I will push to have all my mediations virtual. Makes it very easy. And I have, it's easier to have access to all of my information, or for example, for me to kind of go, hold on one moment and ask, one of my assistants, like start drafting an agreement, like we're real close and these are the terms. I can kind of move a mediation quicker because I have access to just all of everything that I need. So
as we're nearing the end of the show, I wanted to talk to you about the word appointed.
Okay.
Because I just wanted to clarify now, the last time I spoke with a judge who was appointed was Judge Wilfredo Martinez.
Okay.
And the way he described it, I was basically looking up every word that he was saying as he was telling me. So I'm hoping that you would be able to, I don't want to say layman's terms, but like give us a crash course into like the process of being appointed. And with you having 297 days till August 23rd, like the road to keeping Judge Mize on the bench.
In Florida, circuit judges run typically every 6 years.
Okay.
If there's a vacancy, there's a two-step appointment process in Florida. So there's a judicial nominating commission, which is, they have a different commission for each circuit. So I was in the Ninth Circuit. And so the JNC for this area accepts applications, conducts interviews, and submits a list to the governor's office. Who then appoints from that list. And there's a different JNC for each circuit, and there's one for each of the appellate courts as well.
Okay.
You then are required to run in the first election that is at least 1 year from your appointment date.
Okay.
So I was appointed on February 22nd. So the first primary election that is at least 1 year from my appointment date is August 23rd, 2022.
Okay.
I can tell you, I view myself as being in the customer service business.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I may be in charge in the courtroom, but that doesn't mean I don't work for everyone there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a unique position where you're in charge, but you are also the one who everyone else in the room is paying through their tax dollars to work for them.
Yeah.
And I think as a judge, what I want to get every ruling right on the law. I always want to apply the law correctly. Mm-hmm. I also want to make everyone who comes in the law through my courtroom feel like they got a fair proceeding. Feel not just that I followed the law, but that the litigants can tell that I followed the law. They can tell that I was prepared. I think in family law in particular, the stakes are so high.
Yeah.
I mean, for a lot of people, there's nothing more important that could be on trial than their children and whether or not they're going to get to see them.
Mm-hmm.
And they want to look at the judge and say that person was prepared. I had somebody deciding my case who did the absolute best they could. I may have 2,400 cases. When someone is in there for a trial, I want them to feel like they were the only case I had.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so that's what I try to do. Nobody owns these seats. And I hope that people will look at what I've done and say, man, Mize is really trying over there.
Right.
I mean, the orders are coming out. Like our families are getting their orders.
I have to give credit to that.
Yeah.
Our orders come out. I'm always, and your
take
JA, give her a lot of credit from our part because we can't send donuts. But even if, hey, I wish I could. I think they deserve it. It, she will very politely even follow up with us with orders. And sometimes, we got to pass it back and forth between attorneys. And it's just the reality of us all being busy. And she'll follow up with that. And there was definitely a time where I was like, this, like, it fell off my radar and I forgot to draft it. And she followed up and I was like, I was appreciative. So.
I hope everybody who comes to the courtroom, even if they're in a difficult situation, because pretty much everybody in a family law case is in a difficult situation.
I don't think you go to court if you're in an easy situation.
Yeah, except the adoptions. Those are
Yeah,
really nice.
yeah.
But everything else, I hope they at least felt, all right, that guy really tried.
Yeah.
He was on the ball. Like
Yeah.
I had somebody who was working on my case to get it right and to make sure I got everything I was entitled to under the law.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
So I hope everybody will remember that.
So if there was something that you wish that people in general could know, anything at all, even if it's like how to make the right peanut butter and jelly sandwich, right? So anything at all that you wish people just knew, if you could like throw that out to us, what would you say?
That's a tough one, actually. The courthouse really matters.
Mm-hmm.
If you have never been involved in a court case, you may not realize the enormity of the decisions we make there. There are massive things for people's lives. And if you're a voter and you've never had experience, so you don't have a reason to know and have investigated all the judges, right? You didn't have a case before them. There are people about whose lives those judges are making enormous decisions that are going to affect, if you're in the criminal division, could be death penalty issues. If you're in the civil division, could be, your life, your business, all the money you have in the world. In my case, in the family division, whether you see your kids.
Yeah, your retirement accounts and houses and properties, that stuff's important too. So
if the judges seem distant to you or seem like something that doesn't matter in your life, know that there's somebody in your life or somebody, in the lives of people who that judge is, and whether or not they're just following the law and doing the best they can, may be the most important thing in that person's life. And I just hope everybody, pays attention and cares about it because there's nothing I care about more professionally.
Yeah. Well, that was great. Good to know. And we do have a lot of followers who, don't really have cases. They just find it interesting. So that's a good perspective that we got to have. I want to thank you for your time here. That was really great.
Thank you very much.
It was nice to have you on and a unique perspective from what we do. I typically come from we are pushing for agreements or, trying to make sure that we prepare the case to be presenting. So it's definitely a unique
this makes me think I could have a podcast.
You could have a podcast.
I feel like I was very good at this.
You were
Judge,
exceptional.
you killed it.
Yeah,
You really
All
did.
right.
The Ninth Circuit has one.
Yeah, Mize is wise. Or
Yeah,
something. The Wise
Boom.
Hour with Josh Mize.
Done. Just copyrighted
Yeah,
it. Come
copyright
here.
it right now.
This is public evidence
Yeah.
that I came up with that.
Mize is wise is available. Is an available domain.
Not 10 minutes after I get out
Yeah.
of here, I won't be.
Usually on the show, we get questions, we have comments that we put out on the show, but we do have one segment that's called Erin Reacts. And I do want to share this one real quick with both of y'all before we head out of here.
I hear my kitty cat. So we're inspiring.
It'll be quick, but I do want to get both of your guys' reaction, and I'm about to put it up on the screen. Give me one moment. Earlier this week, we found out that a beloved character is coming back, and he now has his own standalone film. And there won't be any sound, but I just want you guys to look at the visuals of what I'm about to show you. And it is a clip from Lightyear, the trailer that's coming out for the Buzz Lightyear standalone film. Now,
Is it live in person or is it?
no, it's not live in person, but this is a Pixar movie that I feel has stepped up its game.
Oh my
All right,
god!
am I revealing too much if I tell you I already know the background of this movie?
No,
All right, so it's
I have a 9-year-old. I should know.
Oh, I don't have a 9-year-old, so I have no excuse for knowing.
You live in Orlando?
I do.
So I mean, this is our people, right?
Yeah, we're Space Coast. Yeah.
Right, well, and Disney, right? Like
Yes.
they pay a lot of our bills.
All right. Am I revealing too much if I tell you I already know the background of this movie?
No, I
Yeah, they pay a lot of.
They're like
yeah, that's true.
well, they are. They're just like a reason that people come.
So really, by knowing about a Disney movie, even though I have no young
Supporting
children, was
the
just
local
good public
community.
service. Yeah. So I
the
think
right
it's a
thing.
prequel that's supposed to be about, the quote, real Buzz Lightyear who inspired the toy. Of course, there's not a real Buzz Lightyear, but
Right.
within the Toy Story world,
Yeah.
he was based on the toy was based on a person or a character, and he's supposed to be the character or person upon which the toy was based.
So
I love it already.
I'm just going to throw out this. So you're saying that in the world of Toy Story, that the world itself has already achieved intergalactic travel, and they're basing the toy off of Star Man.
And I don't know if this was, I'm not going to say my level of knowledge is fully complete. I don't know if that he was based on a person or like a movie character within the Toy Story world.
My
and
mind
this
had
is the
Buzz
movie about that
Aldrich.
character.
Like with the Buzz
Yeah.
Lightyear, right? So
Yeah.
I was like, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
So I think they're probably. That's interesting.
Well, I'll have to get used to the voice being different because they have a different actor doing
Oh,
the
I'm
voice.
not happy about that.
Chris Evans will be playing Buzz
Oh,
Lightyear.
but Chris Evans is acceptable. He's acceptable.
Oh,
I'm a big superhero fan.
okay.
9-year-old son.
As a lawyer, I used to have sometimes order my firm like a Spider-Man or a Superman
It's
tie.
totally appropriate.
Yeah.
I'm a big Wonder Woman fan.
All right.
That's gonna shock you.
I just literally yesterday bought. My wife did.
Yeah.
So for clarity,
Yeah.
my wife bought a Wonder Woman Halloween costume for our dog.
Awesome.
Awesome.
So
I
our-
dress my daughter in Wonder Woman all the time.
Our dog is named Bunny,
Oh.
and so it's going to be Wonder Bunny. It's a bird. It's a
I
plane.
love it.
It's Wonder Bunny. What's interesting? I run a campaign,
Mhm.
and one thing I've learned just about Facebook generally,
Mhm.
human posts get a fraction of the engagement that dog posts get.
Yeah.
So people want to see the
They
dogs.
like dogs.
Yeah.
I did notice that about your website. You do have Bunny up there quite a bit.
Yeah. We have a dog named Scooby. So his name is actually Scooby Doo. So
And I'm actually putting up right there the photo of you, your wife, and your precious bunny.
Mhm.
Very cute. I like it a lot. Obviously, we like dogs and family here. So
So let me turn that off. So once again, Judge, thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule to come sit down with us, give us a little bit of insight to your world and the upcoming election, which I'm just going to put up there once again because I have your website, judgejosh.com, and voting for that specific ballot will be August 23rd.
Yes, and it's a primary election, so nonpartisan races are on all primary ballots.
Mhm.
And even if you're nonpartisan, there's a nonpartisan primary ballot that has just the nonpartisan races. I believe that's how it works.
Okay.
So whatever primary you're in, if you remember the name Josh Mize on the judges, I'd appreciate
Nice
it.
and simple. It's easy to spell.
Yeah. And we'd hope to have you on after re-election
Oh, I'd love that.
down the road.
That'd be
That'd be
great.
great.
See how your election went.
Yeah, there you go.
Look forward to it.
As always, 407-900-7451, Morse-firm.com. Thank you so much for your time. Y'all have a great day.